Your business model. Um, and so there's three real large considerations or factors to focus on. The first of all is what's important to the customer, right? And so this week you've worked through what is the customer's decision-making unit, what's important to them, what's the decision-making process, and the one other relevant question is that do they care to pay for your product upfront, or would they prefer a recurring expense such as a subscription model, right? And this is important because there are businesses that can capitalize a certain expense, and they might have an allocation for that, and it might fit in better with what they're trying to achieve, and so they might want to pay you upfront for your product. And so knowing that is quite important, especially if you're in a B2B model, right? I'm trying to think, for you guys, you're likely to be a B2B, but in your case, generally, if you were to offer your product to a business, my sense is it would be as a service, because it's a small software which you would be creating, right? This you could capitalize something that has to do more with sort of a hardware solution generally, and so my sense is for most of you a recurring expense would be most attractive to your customer, and we'll get into a little bit more about the DMU and DMP and how that relates to your business model with an example in the next couple pages. All right, next is your competition. What is your competition and what business model do they use, right? So for instance, with a Sustainalytics, what is Sustainalytics business model?
Well, it's definitely subscriber based.
Right.
And since it's been kind of integrated into Morningstar, it by itself does not need to think about its own profitability now. It's just part of the parent.
Right, but Morningstar does, right? So
but it's a
subscription model, right? So pretty straightforward. Is there a way for you to come in and disrupt that model potentially, right? So that's the question here. What's the current status quo? What is competition using? And is there a way for you to approach it differently? And so I'm gonna. All right. So next, internal. Now this and value creation. These two are really critical, right? So Don had an example from his slides last week where he showed you two sales processes that one gave cash upfront to the business, and one was a subscription model, and they had very different sales processes, right? Which means that they have a very different cost of customer acquisition. When you start to think about the potential business models that you can go with, what you'll quickly realize is how you sell to your customer is very different based on the business model you go with, and that has a meaningful impact on your cost of customer acquisition, right? As well as lifetime value. And so what you're trying to do with your business model here is one of the key items is you want to maximize the long-term value to Coca, right? And so you select one that makes sense, keeping in mind the rest of your constraints. So if cash flow is important to you, you then go with a model that sells to the customer very quickly. You get cash up front. Potentially your LTV to Coca might be lower, but today as a startup for the next 6 months to 1 year, you really care about that cash more than you care about valuation, right? Because you're fighting for survival and to get to the next funding round. And so that's where these factors become important. Finally, value creation. So this is really most important, right? It comes down to this, that what is the value in quantitative terms that you are creating for your customer, and typically what you can assume to extract from them is 20% of the value created. Now that number differs based on the risk that your customer is taking when they buy your product, right? So if your business model is selling them a product and they pay you cash for the entire product, that is much riskier, because if it doesn't work out for them, there's no way for them to get that money back, right? They've lost that to you. And so in the case of a subscription model, however, where they get to keep paying you till you continue to create value for them, you can potentially extract more value because their risk is now lower, right? And so if you think about ways that you can mitigate risk for your customer, it could be a warranty, it could be a clause where if they're not happy, they can come back in 3 months to return the product, whatever that be, right? But if there are ways for you to mitigate risk for your customer, you can then charge them more, right? Share more of the value that you've created. All right.